Suicide Zen Forgiveness, the pod that shares the stories of those affected by suicide. Lost a loved one? Attempted it yourself? Did you know that when you share a burden, the load is lightened? Come listen in with your host, Elaine Lindsay.
Elaine Lindsay's mission: end the silence, stigma, and shame surrounding suicide, ideation, and mental health. Sharing your burden can lighten the load. Elaine says we must normalize the conversation to make it easier for you to voice your pain and be able to ask for help. Reaching out to any other human being when you're in need of a listening ear must become the norm. Now, please note the Suicide Zen Forgiveness podcast is for education only. Some of this subject matter could be triggering for those of you that are either grieving or having mental health problems. Please call your local suicide hotline or mental health office if you need immediate help. Hi there, it's Elaine, and today's episode is going to be very different. This is the 100th episode. With everything that's going on in the world, I thought today I would bring on some people that I know could offer tips and perhaps some tweaks that you can add to your life to keep up the self-care during these very, very difficult times. Everyone is impacted by what's going on in the world, and the guests that I will be bringing on will help you with that. I will be sure that we have all of their information with the transcript from this show and ways for you to get in touch with each and every one of them. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my first guest. And I just first want to say thank you so much, Angela, for joining me today. I realize this is sort of short notice for everyone. It is our 100th episode, and I literally woke up at midnight last night and realized this is a really good opportunity to actually talk to people about where we are in the world right now. I know so many people that are at a loss as to how they should feel or what they should do or if they can do anything. And coming on the heels of years of COVID, as this has, this last terrorist attack is unprecedented. We, quite honestly, have never seen such brutality in our lifetimes. This is not what we want for our world, and it is affecting people that are nowhere near the conflict. And that's why I wanted to bring you back as a guest and have our guests actually speak to how they're feeling and how the people around them, what they see, and what steps we can take to arm ourselves, if you will, with tools that will allow us to not go down a dark path.
Thank you so much for inviting me on, Elaine. This is such an important topic and timely too, because I shared with you earlier, yesterday I spoke to one of my long-standing friends, and she is in the pit of despair over this. And she said to me, I'm beginning to think this is a world I don't want to live in. And, to hear that just rips my heart out.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be tough.
It is. And, I think you're quite correct. One of the things we learned, especially as entrepreneurs through COVID, is that we think that we are in charge and we can control our surroundings, our environment. And if COVID taught us anything, it's no, we're not. An outside force, the government, whatever, took that understanding away from us. And so now that the world is blowing up, and I have to say, you said something in your introduction that made me think, and that's we have never seen anything. And yet I have to remember that people in other countries, this is their life. And it's been their life. It's been their life since before the world wars. For us, it's new, and we don't have the tools to manage it.
Yeah, that is true. And that's, I mean, that's part of why I do the podcast, because we have never been sufficiently given opportunities to find tools to manage the things that we were not allowed to talk about: depression, anxiety, suicide, ideation, all of those things, mental health just in general. Because everything was so covered up, we don't have ways to deal with it. And as
I
much
think
as,
you're 100% right. Sorry to interrupt. You're
oh, that's
100%
okay.
right.
Yeah, as much as this last generation, I have to give millennials and Gen Z super credit for not staying in the box and saying, no, we want to feel the feels. We know that, you know, however intrinsically they know that you have to go through it, and we didn't, let's face it, that I think opens the door. But let's take care of everybody who's struggling by giving them some options, some hope.
Exactly. And I think feel the feels is one thing, but learning how to manage the feels.
That's very
Because
good.
this is reality. This is what's happening. And I know when I went through the whole Afghanistan thing, because I had a friend who was in a lot of danger in Afghanistan. And, you know, a number of us had
Right.
a daily watch to make sure she'd get out of there. And I was in the boat of my friend I spoke to yesterday. I was getting so depressed, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem, is when we spiral into depression, anxiety, and ideation, it can be really hard to find your way out, to realize there is an up. So, you know, you are a past guest on the program, and you know, we know your story, and there will be links to that as well for any in the audience that don't know it. But I know we've talked before that there are for you signs and little changes in what you do that you are starting to realize are sending you down that path. So let's talk about that.
Yes, and this is one of the things that I became aware of as I was working through the whole Afghanistan affair. Because at first I was alarmed, then I was concerned, and you're quite correct. Once you hit that banana skin of a depression spiral, you go down so fast. So it's funny because I was spending so much time listening to music. I love music. And one day I said to myself, you know, you're listening to a lot of music in minor keys that are, you know, and those are the keys that if the movies want you to think sad thoughts or, you know, depressing thoughts, those are the pieces of music they play. And that was my playlist. And I was listening to a piece and just weeping at my desk. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. I am feeding the fire simply by choosing music that is not, I can't say uplifting because the situation isn't uplifting, but it wasn't a foot on my face anymore, pushing me further down.
Yeah.
So immediately, the next day, I got rid of those playlists and started to find things that were much more positive to listen to. So that's the first step I took, and you know, the change was almost immediate, and it gave me the breathing room to sit down and say to myself, you know, that control the things you can and let go of the things you can't. And I thought, okay, let's be realistic. My being depressed and my wanting to leave this world is not going to do one single thing for this situation. So let's think a little differently. And I started to say, well, what are the things I can manage? Can I help when refugees come here? Can I, work? Can I donate? Can I whatever? Yes. Okay. So that went into one column. And then can I change the war? Well, obviously, I'd like to think I'm that powerful, but apparently the answer was no. So I had to say, well, then let's not focus on what you can't do. And that doesn't mean don't be aware of. What it means is don't buy into in a way that's going to harm me without having any positive benefit on the other side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I will say, and I have talked about with others, is the fact that we can't be silent.
No.
We have to protect ourselves. We have to make sure that we can manage the pain and horror that comes at us, but we can no longer be silent. We have to unite as one human race.
Well, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that along the we can't be silent, the other part of that, because to me, it's what can I do? What is going to be in my bailiwick that I can move the needle on? So for me, can't be silent is looking around at all my friends and saying, who's gone quiet? Who haven't I heard from?
It's good.
Who do I think is struggling? And reach out and say, you okay? Do you want to talk this through? And that works. So silence is, I've realized, often a signal that someone else is struggling.
Yeah.
So while I can talk about, the politics of a situation or the horror of a situation, again, to me, that falls in the category of things that aren't really going to help. But the things that are immediately going to help are who's missing in my life and why.
Yeah. A really good point. And for me, I say politics, keep it out of, it's not about politics. We are at a place where this is not about politics. It's not even about religion.
Yeah.
Okay. We are talking at this point, it's about terrorists. And that is not something any of us singly can do anything about. But what we can do is reach out to one more person you don't know.
Yeah.
And offer a hello, a hand, an ear, something. As well as, it's critically important what you're saying, making sure that those around us have not gone silent. And that's a deeper piece of what I was saying for silence. So thank you so much, because I think that really is critical, that we don't allow that to happen.
And I think it has to be a non-judgmental reach too, because their view of the situation may not be my view of the situation. Yeah. We have Ukraine, and just last year there I was in a luncheon with some people of Russian origin, some people that were Ukrainian, and they're both suffering.
Yeah.
And so whatever my side on that whole thing is, I always think of what somebody said to me: 2 ears, 2 shoulders, 1 mouth, use them in proportion.
It's very good. I really like that.
Me too. And I realize that perhaps our job, especially those of us who have experienced death, our job is really to bear witness, to make people feel heard, and maybe one person at a time, one life preserver at a time, we can slowly walk all of us out of this.
So well said. So well said. And that is truly where we need to go with this, is to reach out and listen.
And remembering that it's a lot like the oxygen mask analogy. First of all, we have to ground ourselves.
Yes. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're both going to go down the staircase. So it may be worth spending some time with that. As I say, am I listening to music that's uplifting? I've also discovered that too much caffeine can depress me. So I have a whole checklist of, am I getting that feeling? So let's go through, am I drinking too much caffeine? Am I listening to sad music? And am I listening to the disaster news feed of people going back and forth about who's wrong and who's right and what we have to do? So the more inputs that I get that are negative, the less I am able to help someone else.
Oh, that too is a really good point, and making sure that you know what your triggers are
Yeah.
can be really, really useful. And that's good that you brought up caffeine, because I hadn't really thought of that, but that makes perfect sense, that could absolutely be a trigger.
It's so funny. And all of this came out of that period of my time when we were going through war a few years ago. And these were all things that just sparked in my head. So when I talked to my friend yesterday, and she said to me, well, don't you care? Aren't you listening to every news broadcast there is? How can you be so unaware? And I had to say to her, it's not that I'm unaware, I'm extremely aware. But I also know that there's no point in me going to the bottom of the spiral with you.
Absolutely. And that's such a good point. It's like, Halloween's coming up. Children overdosing on candy. Anything, even a good thing, too much is too much.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that when we talk about things that are hard to hear and things that are difficult and things that quite often are skewed a certain way in the media to get a reaction,
Exactly.
we have to temper that with, okay, let's tone down how much we're taking in. Yes, we want to be aware, but crippling yourself with depression is not going to help anybody.
Yeah, like we say, it's not going to help you, it's not going to help me, but it's certainly not going to help them.
No.
So
It's really good to know that one can take the time of pay attention, so that you do not only know what your triggers are, but that you have coping mechanisms for changing those things. And the best thing you can do, if you're feeling really alone, if you're feeling is reach out and talk to somebody.
absolutely, absolutely. And as I say, make sure that you are on firm ground before you jump in to save someone.
Absolutely. And on that note, I thank you ever so much for taking time today to join me and offer some really good information, some good tips, and shedding light on things that sometimes we don't voice when we should.
Yeah.
Listening.
And thank you so much for inviting me. I think this is such a timely topic. You deserve a round of applause for doing this. Thank you for making me part of it.
Thank you. We'll see you again soon.
You will indeed.
I am now going to talk with Dr. Karen J. Dover. We started a conversation a number of days ago about her artwork, which spoke to me on so many levels. I have extended heart family in Tel Aviv, and as that we were talking about where the world sits right now, I thought it really appropriate to bring Karen on and have us go through the whys and wherefore of this most powerful and beautiful art that really speaks to where we are. Thank you, Karen, for joining me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
I will let you talk about how the paintings came to be and the order that they go in as we will be showing them to our audience. But the powerful story behind your paintings is really what I would love to share.
I'd be happy to share it with you. The first painting is entitled "United We Stand." In the very early hours of Saturday morning, I stayed quiet, as we tend to. I don't tend not to jump into any of the fora involving politics and religion, but it suddenly struck me that silence had no place. And my feeling at that point was, if not now, when? And I had a very clear sense that suffering and silence was not going to be productive. And I needed to let people know that we were united. And that piece is very, very powerful. And there's a sense of solidarity, there's a sense of unity. And it was really important to heal the souls of those who are suffering so profoundly. And it allows us to touch a place in ourselves that needs expression, but that can find no words. It's a magnificent piece of a crowd in solidarity fighting unequivocally against terrorism. And frankly, there is no, in my mind, no political context, no historical context in which the atrocities, the barbaric acts of October 7th have a place in any civilized world. And ultimately, this is not a focal or local or regional issue. This is an issue of humanity as a whole. And so for that, we stand united.
That was so beautifully said, and I echo your sentiments totally. I don't believe this world has a place anymore for terrorism. It has to stop. We have to unite as one group. We are all human.
Mm-hmm.
Human is to me the only label that should apply. I have a sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I agree entirely, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. This is truly an issue of humanity, and we do have a voice. We, as a civilization, have a voice, and collectively, if we stand united, we will choose our future. If we are silent and there isn't solidarity as humans, our future will be chosen for us.
Again, so very well said. And that to me is the biggest, most important point for people right now. We cannot be silent. And I don't care what your political stripe is. It doesn't matter to me what religion you are. You are a human being, and every one of us who does not see these atrocities as something that should be happening, we all need to come together because each one of us makes that wave of what should amount to love stronger. Did you want to perhaps let's move on to the second painting that you did?
The second painting, and each of these was done previously, and I think they've all waited for their moment to speak.
Right.
It's interesting. I make these, and they express some very deep somatic, soul level emotions, and they wait. And this piece, "Let There Be Light," which is very precious, was misinterpreted by some as being joyful and happy, and was never a joyful or happy piece for me because it's interlaced with horrors and sadness and tragedies, but the overwhelming message of hope and light is what ultimately perseveres. I mean, that's really the dominant strain, is this overriding feeling of hope and light. And it's an old line from the Old Testament. It's from the very beginning in Genesis. It's appropriately, it was actually a line from the day of the attacks, which
Yeah.
was Simchat Torah, which is the beginning of the cycle of the Torah, which is the readings for all of us in Judeo-Christian world. And actually, it was the original for the Muslim world.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a very universal line. And when I made that piece, it was very clear to me that that's what this piece was about. It has been waiting for its moment, and it struck me on the second day that this was the time for the light, that we all needed to see the light.
Well, it's interesting. I wanted to note when I saw this painting, and I didn't realize they had already been done in
Mhm.
waiting, which is really incredible when you think about it, because it means that through you, the universe was already sending healing.
Absolutely. I'm a high priestess from 6,000 years ago. My lineage goes back to way before the
Yeah.
first temple, the second temple. Uh, and, I tend to get these very clear messages, and they come through my art. And I knew that that was going to be a very important piece, and I had to patiently wait for its moment. But it was
Yeah.
very clear that this was the time. This is the piece that unites all of us, regardless of our heritage. It is the piece that unites all.
Absolutely. And I was struck the first time I saw it. I didn't see joy. I saw tears and angst and pain. And that was what really struck me about the painting. It was such a visceral feeling.
Yeah, it is. Again, it's rich with these colors of honey and sweetness. There's beauty
Yeah.
and warmth. And I do remember someone who came and saw it and wanted to buy it and saw all the happiness and joy, and she loved it as a happy place. And I remember at the moment knowing this was not meant to
Mhm.
walk with her. And ultimately it didn't. She took a more joyful piece, because this piece has much more meaning than that. This is a very, very deep, deep ancestral piece.
Yeah, and the more I look at it, the more it resonates. And I
Mhm.
think everybody will find that as they look at the painting, they
Mhm.
will see that let there be light. There is you're absolutely right. There is a hope at the core, that in the center, that radiates out, which is wonderful, because there's so much, to me, pain and tears and suffering in it. Yet that hope comes through, even when you can feel all the pain that goes with it.
Mhm.
Wow.
It's a very powerful piece. It's proudly been with me in my office since it was created, and it's been waiting for its moment, which is now.
It is absolutely powerful, and I believe the three paintings. It is such a journey. I I have a feeling inside that there will be a fourth.
There is a fourth. And ironically, it was off at the photographer's being cataloged in his archives, and we haven't done the final editing of it, which is why it hasn't been presented. And it's entitled "The Wailing Wall," the Western Wall.
Yeah.
It's a stunning piece. It's 4 feet by 4 feet, and
Wow.
it's self-created. And I remember a beautiful man who came to see it, who was of uh, Croatian descent, was saying, "It's so dark. It's just so dark, and there's just this tiny, tiny bit of light." And I said, "Do you know anything about my history?" It's always that light that we see. It's a magnificent, multi-layered piece about the Wailing Wall, which is excavated on the western side of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
Absolutely.
So you will see that one. It will come. But the third one that has been with me for a while, and again, it was unclear to me when it was created. It's part of a diptych. It was created,
Okay.
and I was utterly and totally befuddled as to where this came from because I didn't understand it as it was made. It's been with me in my office beside my desk for a few years now, and
Wow.
it's entitled Solo, a Diptych, and it was originally that,
Oh,
and it was originally entitled that because it was about feeling utterly and totally alone in this world. But it's been renamed for this war.
yeah.
Yeah, and you can mention the title of it.
Oh,
Never Again Is Now. Never
yeah.
Again Is Now, and it really looks like well, it's a very, very powerful piece, incredibly powerful, and it's united so many, which ultimately I think is the purpose of this work. I never really knew as I was creating all these pieces over the many, many years. There was always that question, to what end? Because in order to store and keep all sorts of art forms, one has to have a pretty good idea why they're doing it. And there was never a clear answer.
Right.
But I had to have the faith that it would ultimately declare itself, and it has now, because they are now making their statements in a world where words just aren't enough. I keep hearing people say, "I have no words, no words.
Yeah.
I'm speechless." People don't have the language to express their emotions, and this artwork is finally, well, it's filling in, but it's also providing the quote unquote language that we need.
That is so true. Absolutely. And this is the painting. Never Again Is Now. This is the painting that started us talking,
Hmm.
because I was at a very dark place, very, very worried about our family and my friends. And I had just got the news that one of my friends' sisters' in-laws had lost their house to a bomb, and thank God they are okay. But there are so many that are not, and it was within 5 minutes that I saw this painting, and it had just sort of started a rumble in me all week that what can I do? What can I do? I can't just sit and do nothing.
Hmm.
I am for the best part, I would say, agnostic. Um, I have never chosen a friend and checked their religion. It, it is your prerogative. It is your beliefs, and I honor them in all of my friends. It doesn't matter to me, and it never has. And I think that's why, for me, human is the only label that fits. It's the only label that should unite us all,
Hmm. Hmm.
because as much as this painting speaks to me, we never want to see this again. We really never want to see this again.
I didn't think we would see this, frankly. In my lifetime, I wasn't prepared for this
No.
in any way, shape, or form.
And I think that's a part of the shock, the shell shock of everyone, because no one did expect to see this.
Hmm.
But my own father in the 70s was a peacekeeper in Gaza. And even then, there were atrocities happening that were very hard to take. But even he, at 90 years of age, is totally aghast, because he too never thought it would come to this.
Now I'm speechless.
Oh,
Just listening to this is it's very humbling.
well, and this, what I'm going to say next, is probably going to be very controversial for some people, but in the way that Mother Nature causes destruction in order to rebuild, this is a wake-up call for humanity that terrorists cannot be allowed to be part of the fabric of our world. And in whatever way we can, the whole world has to come together to acknowledge that this is absolutely unacceptable.
I do agree this is a wake-up call. We've been very complacent, especially after the recent events with this pandemic. No one wants discomfort. Our tolerance for discomfort is lower than ever.
Oh, yeah.
Our threshold is so low that we push away anything that's uncomfortable. And I think, if anything, this is forcing us to stand up and be counted. Complacency has no place at all. It's easy, but it will lead to disaster. And it
Absolutely.
this has to be taken on very seriously.
Yeah, for me, there is no quarter. It has to come to a full stop.
Mm-hmm.
We can't allow what we're seeing. We can't allow what they're putting on the news and showing people's pain. And I understand the why, because even those that are in the media are in shock. And part of why we do this podcast is to give people tools to be able to live through the dark times of your soul, through the times of loss of friends and family, and even loss of jobs and loss of pets, which to some people think that is a much lesser thing. But to the person that is going through whatever, it can be the only thing. And to be able to find that little bead of light, that little bit of hope in going forward, I think one of those pieces of hope needs to be that we need to acknowledge each other, and we need to start looking out for others, not the others that we're already attached to, but all the others, all the innocents that we don't necessarily know. If we each reach out to even one extra person, then we can come together as a wave of humanity that is basically going forward in hope and love, because that's what we need.
Mm-hmm. Hear, hear.
I thank you so much for your time, Karen, and more than that, I thank you for your talent and being aware enough to hold on to these paintings until their time. And
it wasn't easy, and it's as you're in the middle of it, it's there's always the question, to what end? And I'm forever asking, to what end? To what end? And when does one speak? It became very clear, if not now, when.
Yeah.
If not now, when. And it's not my style to stand up publicly, but this moment in time is it.
Yeah, and for each and every one of you who hasn't stood up before, this is the time.
Mm-hmm. To stay united. This is our world. And if we don't speak, someone will speak for us.
Oh, so well said. So well said.
And on that note, I'm going to go take care of my patients.
That's wonderful to hear.
Thank you.
I thank you so much, Dr. Karen J. Dover. has been with us today. And I am just so grateful, and my heart is so full at being able to share your work with our audience.
Thank you.
And
An incredible honor, truly, to be with you. I never knew as I was creating any of this work what its purpose was. I just knew deeply that it would ultimately find its place. There's a gorgeous piece that's presently at the Royal Canadian Geographical Society on display about our climate, uh,
yes,
and it's extended its stay with James Cameron's submarine. It's a really stunning piece. And again, when I made that, I wasn't sure where it would find its place, but it did, thanks to Michelle Valberg and the people
yeah.
at the society. But ultimately, I've had the faith to know when each piece is created, it will ultimately find its time. And I've learned patience in a new way. My father had tried to teach me this. I was very impatient as a child, and he's always I can hear him now saying, just wait, be patient, it will find its time. And my goodness, he's right, and he is smiling from the grave. I know he's prouder now than ever
Oh,
that
absolutely.
I've found my voice.
You most certainly have, and I cannot thank you enough. We will definitely be talking again
We'll
soon.
speak again. Thank you. When I get the next piece, the fourth in this quartet, entitled the Western Wall, the Kotel, then we can speak again. It's being prepared archivally presently,
Oh,
and
lovely.
it has huge presence, huge presence. It's in every hue of blue that ever was. But what's magnificent about it is that there's a tiny bit of light. And there was a lovely man who really couldn't understand why it was so dark. But I don't see the darkness. I see the light. I see light, and I see hope, and I see this is our world to choose in our, in our model. It's not going to be imposed upon us if we have a voice. But if we sit by complacently, it will be chosen for us.
And all of us that have a voice, we need to use it.
Mm-hmm. This is not a time for silence.
No.
That's for sure. Anyway, I must run, and thank you so much for having me speak with you today. It's an honor beyond belief.
Well, thank you so much. You have touched my heart and my soul.
Thank you. Well, then I've achieved my goal.
My next guest, Chris Michelle. We go back a little bit, and we were just talking about the fact that we go back to before his book came out. So I think it's pretty apropos that maybe we start off with what you said to me when you first came in today.
Well, what's interesting is you reached out to me on the day that's actually one of my favorite entries in the book, and so we're going to mess with the recording here because it's today is October 17th. Okay,
Yeah.
So my book is written. It's called The Red Chair Experience, and it is a daily inspiration. And so you have the opportunity each day to pick a page, right? And so these are all laid out by the calendar. And so there's 366 entries. You just happen to pick the day to reach out to me when, and I loved your message. You're like, I think we need to talk. We haven't talked in a while, and we need to get together again. And this is, again, one of my favorite entries. And it's the quote. I have a quote at the beginning that says, "When you survive this." And it's by a guy named Peter Tchaikovsky. And Peter had written this, as we were just talking about, almost 4 years to the day when he wrote this. And he put together a book that they're just short stories. But the idea behind it is that, and I use 2 or 3 sentences of his 5-paragraph short story, but basically it's a telling of when you survive this, what a great story you'll have to tell. When you survive this, you'll have the strength, you'll have the ability to do the things you never thought you could do, right? And when you survive this, and you'll be able to look back and go, wow, I can't believe I did those things. Right. And so when you reached out this morning, I was like, wow, that was one of those hidden gems, right? Those little, little nudges, if you will, from the universe, from God, that just says, hey, it's time to talk about this. So we couldn't help but talk about this today. So,
well, absolutely. And it's funny that you say that, nudge from the universe, because I said that to another guest today, because it was midnight last night. I got what for me was really odd, a little note from Podbean, who hosts my show, that said, your next show is your 100th show.
wow.
And it was, oh, really? And right on the heels of that was, you have to address what's going on. I have good friends who said that none of us can be silent anymore. And I was really nice, though. I did not tag you at 1 o'clock in the morning. I waited till this morning because I thought I might get people to say yes a little better if I didn't disturb them from their sleep.
I wouldn't have seen it till this morning anyways. My phone, luckily I'm
smart man.
I can say I'm smart enough, right, to at least turn my phone off in the evenings. But
yeah.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, because you and I have had some amazing conversations, and we continue to, right? We were just talking earlier about one of my friends, and I want to connect you with one of my friends who, again, I think would be, you all would be a great connection. But that's what I love about what we do and who we are, is we get the opportunities, and we don't skirt them. We don't just tuck them away. We've learned enough in life to say, hey, step up, follow the nudge, listen to what's going on. And my friend that I'm going to introduce you to, he and I do that with each other. We follow the nudge, right? We listen to it. It may take 2 or 3 times, but we follow the nudge, right? And we kind of lean into it, if you will, right? And like you said, now is a perfect time, right? We're going into the winter months. We're heading into a time when it's getting cold, and people get lonely, and people get we get to the holidays where, oh gosh, we're missing a person. We miss a relationship. We're missing whatever, right? We're missing the connection. And as a result, we kind of tend to focus inward, if you will.
Yeah.
And as a result, we miss out on all the things that are going on around us. And not just that, but then we have a story to share, right? Because when you survive this, right? Because when you get through this, and whatever that is, it could be work, it could be a relationship, it could be anything in life, but we get the opportunity to hopefully share with someone else how we survived this and what lessons we learned from it. Or maybe it's just an opportunity for them to hear, hey, I'm not alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because some of us are just messy, and survival doesn't look pretty,
Right.
but it is in fact survival. And another thing you said, it's getting on winter and the holidays, and there's a lot of people have seasonal affective disorder. And when you don't get that vitamin D and you don't get the sun, it can have you spiraling before you know it. The other big elephant in the room is what's going on right now in and around Israel. And that's something that I really wanted to address. And my message may be a little controversial, but I think it's time for the whole world to stop being silent and step up. We are one human race.
Yep.
I don't care what your politics are. I have never in my life asked anybody, and you can attest to this, what religion they are before I wanted them to be my friend.
Right.
I don't care about these things. I care that you're a human being, and I want us all to be okay. So that's why we're doing today.
Well, good. Yeah, because a lot of times I think we get caught up we get caught up in the politics, and we get caught up in the religion. Those are the two things we're always told never to talk about. But what's really interesting, why aren't people as passionate about what they eat? Why aren't people as passionate about the clothes that they wear or the things that they do, right? Why aren't we passionate about all these other things. But those are the two things that we just can't talk about, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, you're right. We're all the same. We're all from the human race. Doesn't matter your skin color. Doesn't matter your
No,
height. I mean, I'm 6'5", right? And so,
I am not.
and I'm bald. And so people can look at that and be intimidated or think things of me. But the reality is, you don't know until you start to ask questions, right? You get to realize, hey, there's another movie. It came out, and a book came out years ago called The Same Kind of Different as Me.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that, which is, it just basically says, hey, you're no different. It doesn't matter if you have a house or don't have a house. It doesn't matter if you have a job or don't have a job. It doesn't matter if you're married or not married. It doesn't matter if you have kids, don't kids. It doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter what your politics. It doesn't matter what any of these things are. We're here to work together. We're here to help each other out. And that's where we get the opportunity. And some of us choose to step up, and some of us choose to step back. And hopefully we can all learn to step forward and do what we can to help each other out. I mean, because that's really what it's all about.
Absolutely. And people will often say, but I'm just one person. What can I do? Well, the fact is, what you can do is link arms with another person. And when we do that and keep doing that, we are, a weird way to put it, but we are legion when we all come together.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's an old, it's terrible today. I don't remember where it came from, but if I cut you, do you not bleed? We all bleed the same.
Right.
Cut the inside open. We're all exactly the same.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, one of my suggestions to people is really limit the amount of news that you're taking in, because they all have slants. It doesn't matter. It's human nature to put forth your own perspective. This is my perspective, and this is your perspective. But in order to protect yourself, you cannot allow yourself to be inundated with horror and terror and darkness and dare I say evil, which is what we cannot have. And the reason I did this show today is to make sure that I talk to some of the people who I respect deeply, who I know will have suggestions and wisdom for tips and things we can do to gird ourselves against those dark things.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, you mentioned, what can I do as a person? Well, when I wrote the book, the thing that I remember thinking was, if just one person picks it up, that would be enough, right? If just one person would get something out of it, that would be enough. And I think too often we think so small that we don't realize that I can make a difference in somebody else's life. It doesn't matter. It could be good, it could be bad, right? But I can make a difference in somebody's life. And so when you say, who am I? We don't all need to be world leaders. We don't all need to be, these major influences and all this other stuff. Who's the one person that you can influence? Who's the one person that you can gather yourself with, to your point, and link arms with, right? Because the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. I'll get the words right, don't worry. But we fail to see the strength that we all have when we do connect, when we do get together and we do help each other out. And first of all, we got to take care of ourselves. We have to learn to take care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And when we learn to take care of ourselves, then we can take care of other people. And so all of this kind of plays into what you were just talking about. Don't watch the news. I haven't watched the news in years. It doesn't mean that I'm stupid. It doesn't mean that I don't know what's going on in the world. It means that I'm not interested in hearing all the different slants, and I'm not interested in putting myself in a position to where I'm listening to all those things. I listen to podcasts. I listen to books. I talk with people, right? It's they talk about the 5 people that you connect yourself with, right? That's the character of who you are, is the 5 closest friends that you connect with. Well, the way you're going to be affected is by what? By the things you read and by the things that you talk about and the people you hang out with. So who are you hanging out with? Who are you talking with? What kind of conversations are you having? And what are you reading? And if you're reading things and you're seeing things and you're hearing things, if you're watching a podcast, if you're listening to a podcast, right, those things will all affect how we act and go through our lives and how we will affect other people. Because believe it or not, people are watching you.
Yeah.
And somebody wants to follow you. Somebody wants to be influenced by you. The question is who is it? And who are you going to influence?
Yeah, who and how.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing that I think is really critically important, I know you'll agree with me, is listening. And I was talking to Kevin Ford, who is the CEO of Callian Group. He's actually here in Ottawa. We were talking, and I said, I want to task everyone with just once a month, even spend 10 minutes and listen to someone you don't know. Give them 10 minutes of your time, because we all just want to be seen and heard. Just imagine if we all pick one person every month.
Right.
We're all going to get to have someone else in our life, someone that is listening. And somebody said to me earlier today, we have 2 ears, 2 shoulders, 1 mouth. Keep them in perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say, listen to somebody else for 10 minutes. And if you engage with somebody in conversation, what you can learn is you can learn what you like. You can also learn what you don't like.
Yeah.
It's okay to not like what somebody else likes. I don't like fava beans, right? I mean, I'm just picking something, but there are certain things I just don't like, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that we can't be friends. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we can't have a spirited conversation, and I can learn from the things that you said, because it challenged me to think, wait a minute, why have I been thinking this way? Well, it's the way I was brought up, or I was always taught to do this, or right. And I have those people in my life. I was thinking, and I shared this with somebody the other day. I said, I love my friends, the people that I have in my life right now. I've got a lot of really good people that are in my life, and they're helping me, and I'm helping them, and we're influencing each other, and we're having conversations, and we're growing, and we're becoming different people, which is really cool.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And it's true. It doesn't matter who you talk to. If you listen, you will learn something new. Okay. From almost anybody, including the people closest to you, who sometimes, you think you're listening, but sometimes we're so busy figuring out what we're going to insert in the conversation or what we want to tell them, that we're not really fully listening to what they say. And that's something I am actively, and have been for a few years now, trying to change, because I think it's so much more important to others to give them that respect, to give them that actual time. You've got lots of time to say what you have to say and to think about what you have to say.
Yeah. I think it was Stephen Covey who said, if you want to be interesting, be interested.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And to your point earlier about listening, when we learn how to listen effectively, we're not trying to get to our statement. We're trying to listen so we can effectively understand what's going on. Right. When was the last time that you actually listened to somebody completely? I've been in sales for over 30 years. And one of the things that I've learned, and I've seen, and there's studies that have been done about it, is we often listen to like the first 10 words of what somebody says, and we miss the message, because what people tell you that they really want or need is in the last 10 words.
Yeah.
And that's the fascinating thing, is we think we've got the answer right away. Oh, I've got something to share. Yeah. And if we sit and we listen and we ask a few more questions, tell me more about that. Why do you think that way? Why does that mean that to you? What does this mean? What is this, where is this going, or where is this happening? Why is this happening? If you ask these questions and you can draw some things out, you actually can listen and find out what people really want, really need. And I'm not just saying that from a sales perspective. I'm just saying from a relationship perspective, right?
Absolutely.
So,
And in fact, when you're listening, if you're really listening, what you thought you were going to say can often have no relevance in the conversation.
right. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to pop in with me and share your wisdom. We will make sure that we have the links to not just your book, but also your original time on the show. And just be well. And I look forward to hopefully sometime soon actually getting to see you in real life.
Well, I'm hopeful that that would be a possibility. I know we live in two different countries, but I am getting to travel a little bit more.
Yay.
And so, yeah, I'd say there's a pretty good opportunity for that. But thank you again, my friend. It was great to see you.
You too. You too. I'm hugging you virtually. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon. I am so thrilled today to be joined by my dear friend Sandra Losky, who has actually been, I think, one of the first guests I had on the show in 2021. And I know, Sandra, we both have gone through things and suffered tragedy. And here we are right now. It's indescribable what people are going through. The fear, the everything that goes along with not just war, but in this case, unprecedented brutality and terrorism. And there are so many people that are hurting. You run an incredible recovery group and deal with addictions, and I think you were one of my first choices for someone to come on and offer some kind of tip or tweak or something that you offer people, suggesting things they can do for themselves to be sure that they're not spiraling.
Yeah, that's great, Elaine, and thanks for creating this space, because very often we don't think about it in that very clear way. You know, how do we recognize we could potentially be spiraling?
Yeah.
And one of the things I suppose I would say is, and it's a real recovery piece that you're taught when you step onto a recovery pathway. Most recovery pathways will have a similar type kind of way of thinking about things. It's what are dangerous to us when we step onto a recovery pathway initially are people, places and things. And usually that associates with people you used to hang around with, or people that are associated with the substance, the use, the behaviour, wherever that is, you know, equally the places, equally the things, you know.
Yeah.
And so when we change those things, you know, we open up a different view of the world. Yeah. But when we are in recovery, guess what's equally important? People, places and things.
Isn't that the way?
Isn't that the way? So we take what's negative and we go, I'm using that to turn it around, you know. So one of the exercises that we would do when things get a bit challenging, or we recognise that there might be a level of anxiety that is rising within a group, is we bring people back to a very grounded place. Who are the people that are supporting you? So just say somebody gets a comment on social media that they don't like, or somebody makes a comment about addiction in a very negative way. So there's one person, and how many people are saying, you're doing great, fair play to you, I can see the change. Let's put our attention on those people and be appreciative that we have people who are supporting us. You know, what are the tools and the resources? You know, what are your journaling prompts that you're doing? What is the step that you might be on if you're working a 12-step process? What's some of maybe the CBT tricks and tools and resources you've learned if you're in another a recovery space. What are those things? Can I name 5 things I see? Can I name 2 things I can touch? Can I name 1 thing I can smell? Bring myself back into the present moment. Bring it back into the body. Come out of the head. The head is enemy territory. The head will bring you all sorts of places, you know. Authors are great for this. They entertain us with their books and they bring us to places in our mind. We go there without writing a book. You know, we go to those places. So if we can't bring ourselves back, we need to bring ourselves back in our body. Breathe, walk, do something physical with your body. And they're the things that you can kind of really get a handle on quite quickly, you know. So this is my number 1 go-to trick, if you like, when I'm feeling my own anxiety. Have I a roof over my head that's going to keep me safe tonight? Yes. Have I a dry bed? Yes. Have I food in the fridge that will feed me today and maybe tomorrow? Yes. Do I have a few phone numbers I can ring if I'm feeling I want to have a chat? Absolutely. And with the internet, that's 24/7, you know. So straight away, there's 4 things that I can kind of do to help alleviate my anxiety. And then the very last thing I think that's really useful is to say, life happens. Me worrying about life is not going to stop that. It's not going to change anything out there. And I heard a very good phrase the other day that was really helpful, that worrying is prayer in reverse.
Wow.
I know. Yeah, worrying
Wow.
is prayer in reverse. And I just thought, you know what, if I'm going to be praying, wherever that is, like whatever form that takes for people, I want to be affirming I am well, I am safe, I am healthy, I'm okay, I'm supported. I want to be, that's what I want to be focused on, you know. So they're really that get grounded, get present, breathe, and my immediate needs met for today. And if they are, you know, then I'm better off than probably 90% of people in the world.
It's so good, it's so succinct, and it's such common sense.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all need to do it, whether you're in recovery or not. And I have to thank you, because that's why I reached out, because I knew that even though it's for those of us that have walked that path, it's also for everyone else, because today I'm looking at even bigger issues and looking at the pain and horror in the world and ways to mitigate it for everyone, because it's time. Humans need to stand together and help each other to heal.
Yeah. There's, you know, there's a lot of wounding in the world, and there's a lot of wounded people in the world, but equally there's a lot of healed people in the world, you know, and I think we sometimes forget that. There are people who have healed their wounds and can stand still and be a beacon of light for others. And who are those people in your life? You only need one. You only need one. So I think that's hugely important to remember. The healing is happening as much as the wounding is happening. The healing is also happening.
That is such a good point, and one that you really don't want to lose sight of, because again, that offers hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's definitely something we all need. I knew that in reaching out to Ireland, I would find exactly what we needed today. Sandra, I thank you so much. I can't wait to see you again, because it's definitely been too long. And I thank you for your wisdom and your calm and everything you do for your recovery project, everywhere you do it. And we will make sure that links for everything you have are on the site when this goes live. Thank you again so much, and I'll see you soon.
You will.
And my next guest I'm excited to have back. This is Nathaniel J. Brown. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence today. I kind of caught people off guard today and reached out for immediacy and brought people on, and I have to say how touched I am that you have come to chat with us today, because it's a bit of a different and difficult subject
Yeah.
because of where the world is today.
Yeah.
This has been almost 2 weeks of unimaginable horror
Yeah.
for so many. And I don't know that we as humans are equipped with any tools that we can use to deal with this level of death and destruction, and
hmm
at the hands of other humans, which makes it really, really hard. And
Yeah.
with nothing, no, I guess no uh, space in between. We're talking about human
Right.
to human, which is what I guess I'm really having trouble with. I do want to say right off the bat, I I believe we are all human. I say this all the time. If you cut us, we bleed. If you look inside, we all have basically the same organs. Okay, that's
hmm
it. We are human. The human race is one thing. The
Yeah.
fact that we have differences, I think, should make it interesting. It makes it easier to know who your kids are, because it would be pretty bizarre if we all looked exactly alike.
Right.
Me having to have a little
Right.
humor in this, but the concept of harming others simply because you can, with no real consideration, not only for their lives, but for your own.
For your own. Right. Right.
Yeah, that's the piece I think that makes it hardest for me to sleep. And I
Yeah.
thought it best to bring on some of my guests. I respect all my guests, but I wanted a few guests that had probably a different perspective and maybe a different understanding of where we are now and what we can do as humans, one to another, to protect ourselves and each other
hmm
other from this horror and from getting sucked into the pit of darkness from what
Yeah.
we're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. That is. That's the question. The what I like to do is I like to take concepts from things that I already do and superimpose them over life. And one of the things I came across, not so recently, but pretty recently, was a data standard around how information is protected. And one of the things they tell you to do, the first thing they tell you to do, is to build a network. And I think that's thing number one, a
Yes.
network of people who are like-minded. Starting there. And everything happens internally. Like this entire data standard that I'm reading and learning and studying to implement and do compliance, audits against, is all about assessing what's being done internally in the organization. So you have a QSA, a qualified security auditor. And what they do is they come in, and what they're checking for, they're not telling you what to do. They're coming to check for what kind of internal work you've been doing in the organization to stay compliant with the standards that we've all agreed to.
Right.
Okay. So when I look at it like that, high level, not to get too granular, there's all kinds of things that come underneath that. When you look at standards, I think the issue on the table is that our standards for each other are low. because we think we're entitled to taking what someone else has. That's a low standard. The minute you move into entitlement, you've lowered your standards for existing or coexisting with the rest of humanity, right? So
Yeah.
if we all, and Tony Robbins taught this for years, if we all raised our standards, we also raise our tolerance level. All right. So what I've understood in organizations and things, they have something called enterprise risk management. This
Yeah.
is the risk understanding of the entire enterprise. What can we tolerate? What can we not tolerate? What do we need to remediate right now? And I think that what needs to be remediated right now is this entitlement generation,
Yeah.
this mindset of entitlement. And it's not even that it's the younger kids. When I
No.
say generation, I'm talking about the people who are privy to the information of now. And social media seems to be driving the bus
Yeah.
straight towards the smoke, the towers of smoke, because it is censoring the truth, not allowing a full expression of that truth. And then the only way people know how to express it is aggressively. That level of entitlement over information, the level of entitlement over labels, the level of entitlement over race, the level of entitlement over geographical locations, the level of entitlement over laws and buildings and all of those things. We possess things and we hold them so tight, like this is mine and you cannot do anything about it. And if you do, I will annihilate you. That is a low standard way of living. Versus, like you said early in the conversation, what if we just took a step back and looked at everything from a high level and think, if we took the emotions off the table for 5 minutes and just dealt with the information that's between us and anyone else, what's actually there, Elaine? What's really there? Because emotions are like fiber to stool. It just gives it bulk. That's what it does. It gives events fluff. If you remove emotion from the entire scenario, all you have is an event before you. And what if there's just a simple disagreement around what you and I believe? Like you said, we don't get into too much religion or politics or anything like that because I don't really care about that stuff. But what if we're all saying the same thing, but we're saying it in with different vernacular? The terms that are used in cybersecurity are the same terms used in personal development. They just are used differently in cybersecurity. When you say something like build a firewall, create a firewall to segment a network, well, you're building a boundary. Install a boundary around your place, right? So it's the same. It's all the same. Identity access management. Oh, control who has access to the information that's pertinent to you. All of that stuff is there. It's in the standards. But when you create standards that include, I want you all to be, I want us all to be in the same space. It's the human race standard is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There needs to be a standard around how we treat one another in a humane way. And it has to be that we're graceful enough. We're giving one another the amount of grace to be different than we expect. A lot of what we argue about is, and what we fight about from the global sense all the way down to the granular personal sense, is about what something meant to us that we're expecting someone else to express. Right? It's like me, it's the same thing as me drinking the poison, but I want you to die from it. Okay? That kind of stuff, it's gonna be there, but we want to try to shift the tide so that it's not as much. We kind of want there to be a little tension and trying to get back to not necessarily homeostasis where things are just stagnant, because then you have that stale data, you have that stale information, and when things are stale, they're not moving, things aren't alive, nothing can really live. So there needs to be a churning of things, but there needs to be more questions on the table around those churnings.
Yes.
Right. So like the maturity part is I see that you're different than I am. I see that what you believe is different. How you behave is different. Why don't you give me an open window into why you're that way? What if we got curious instead of jealous? What if we got curious instead of entitled? What if we got curious and wanted to ask questions? Questions that don't necessarily have an answer that we can give. We have to rely on another to give those answers. What kind of interdependent human race could we create if we were relying on others to share what was theirs to share, and we'd be willing to participate in it, even if we don't agree with it? We don't have to do everything everybody else is doing, but I think this will help solve some of the entitlement thing, some of this "you owe me" thing that's here, or the shirking of the truth, right? The hiding of the truth. America is really good at that. We don't want to talk about some of the things that really started the undercurrent of this country, so we'll just cloak over it and throw some politics and Christianese on it, and everybody will forget. Well, that's not happening anymore, because what's been buried, what's happening is that the wound that hadn't been properly treated is now starting to get some bacteria in it, and now it needs to express that bacteria. And what we're seeing is, with all the explosions and everything like that, we're seeing an expansion of these negative moments, these negative events. But what happens is, I was talking to my son about this, these things detonate and they collapse space time in front of us and explode in front of us. And what's in front of us that's exploding is not necessarily the bomb, but it's the event. It's our meaning around the thing that explodes in front of us. So what a bomb does is that it doesn't explode. A bomb detonates. It compresses the air around it, and then it expands the air at a high rate, right? So what we have going on is that sort of communication, that sort of relationship. We have these explosive relationships with one another. Well, you didn't call me the right pronouns, or you didn't call me the right thing. We got all these explosive relationships, and we're just around here detonating. Everybody's around here detonating. What if we just got back to the lab and got back to the human element? I'm dealing with a human being with a beating heart who possibly could be a match for something I need.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson teaches this. He said, what if you approach people that you're talking to as if you can learn something from them that you never knew? Would you be so willing to annihilate someone you thought you can learn something from? That's a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I know I've talked a lot.
Oh, no, that it's perfect. You're saying all the things. This is why I asked you to be here.
Okay.
You've spoken exactly to what I've been saying all day long. Curiosity. We need to have curiosity to learn about others. And yes, because we can offer things they don't have, and they can offer us things we don't have. Experiences and understanding of situations we've never been in.
Yeah.
And perhaps don't want to be, or possibly we do. But if we don't allow people to share those differences, we're never going to know. And that's not just sad, it's boring.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's unproductive, it's uncooperative, and it's disenfranchising. It's very dismissing to someone to tell them that what they have to offer doesn't matter as much as how you feel about what you think you're entitled to. That's what war is. That's what creates these contentious moments between countries, between people, between entities. It's that you have something I want, and I'd rather not ask you any curious questions around it. I'd rather just take it, versus, well, how did you get that? And why do you have it? And why do you need it? What does this mean to you? How is this culturally relevant? Like, we're bombing buildings and stuff is what they did back during the apartheid and slavery times, coming through the 1800s, coming through the early 1900s. Bombing buildings was a way to annihilate someone's identity, right? So they would bomb buildings that held records to people's family lineages. That's why a lot of African Americans in this country don't know who their family lineages are, because the buildings that were burned down were the buildings that were burned down that had the data that contained their history. How dare we take from someone something that's so culturally relevant, then a relic, a building, a museum, something that's relevant to their community? How dare we, as humans, take something like that away from someone because we feel like we have a right to do so? That is the utmost delusion, to feel you have a right to.
Absolutely.
Like it's not even a real, because a feeling isn't a fact. It's a feeling. It's an interpretation of a perceived reality. It's your perception of a reality you think you're experiencing. You feel as though this is happening, but that doesn't make it a fact. And if you're not willing to ask those questions, what's really the facts on the table? What's really happening right now? Or is what's on social media the truth, or is that's what everybody's responding to? We see things are happening, and people are talking about any and everything, but what's really true? And we won't know unless we stop taking out the people that would have the answers to those questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, don't you dare be sorry. Okay. I asked you
Yeah.
here because I knew you would have something important to say. And
Misunderstood. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
yeah, no, I I get where you're coming from, and I totally understand all of that.
Mhm.
What I guess what I guess I do not understand. I am very curious. I do not
Mhm.
understand the mind of a terrorist. I do not
Yeah,
understand how you can value life so little you do not even value your own.
that's it. But see, that's it. That you've got it. That's the understanding. The devaluing of life of others devalues your life. You don't get to project out what you don't experience. That's the way it works. Everything that comes out of your mouth comes back to you as fruit for you to dine on it. That's what judgment is. Judgment is the day you eat what you sown. That's the way it works. So like you don't get to have a terrorist mindset without having first been the terrorist to oneself.
Okay.
A terrorist mindset is a person who has been a terror to themselves first. Everything happens again. Remember, the QSA comes to assess what you're doing inside the network, inside the organization. Everything that we look at, if we're looking at to see from the outside what's going on in here, and what's going on inside always manifests on the outside. It always expresses. So, like I tell people, like if you're experiencing a certain thing, the only way it changes, Jim Rohn taught this for years, is if you change.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson taught it. He said, "Look, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make that change." I'm going to be in Dubai next month talking about it starts with you at a conference.
Yeah.
It all starts with us.
It does.
We have to be willing to do the work. And I shared a quote with my wife earlier today, and I said, "This quote right here is something I've been pondering on for the last week or so, but more than that, actually, I've been pondering on it for the last couple weeks." But it says the magic is in the magic of what you want is in the work that you're avoiding.
Ooh.
The magic to everything we're looking for, that those outcomes, pay attention to what you say, I'm not doing that because so and so isn't. Whatever you're turning your face away from is your work to do. That's your responsibility towards the solution. And if no one's coming to the table except at the mouth of a gun, no one's coming to the table except with guns drawn and grenade clips pulled out, then we're not going to have a conversation. We're going to have a bloodbath. And it's happening in the political sense. It's happening in relationships. It's happening in schools. It's happening all over where we have this annihilation sort of seed that's sort of sprouting. It's sprouting in kids. It's sprouting in communities and subgroups and subsets of politics and stuff like that. All this stuff is happening. And honestly, what needs to happen is a conversation needs to happen with no guns, no ammunition, just questions to say, tell me how you are feeling in the world that you're living in. What is the world you're living in giving you as an experience that's making it so that you express yourself that way? And how can I help? See, we don't want to help. We want to judge. We want to tell somebody that they're wrong because that's what the coaching industry has done. It's created this industry of people who just point fingers. Well, you're doing this and you're not doing this right. You're not doing this right. You're not doing this right. Well, How about ask them unbiased questions? How about we pare things down? What do I mean by that? PARE. Give everybody an acronym. I love acronyms. PARE. First P is pause, right? Take a moment, take a breath, because that's the thing you have control over. You have control over your breath. That's yours. No one can control that for you. They can if you stop being able to control it. But as long as it's in your control, that inhale, exhale, you can do it as slow or as fast as you want to. Control your breath, because when you control your breath, you control your heart rate. You control your heart rate, you control how the blood is reacting on the heart, and you control your stress level, your cortisol levels. You kind of bring yourself down. And after the pause is ask. That's when you start asking unbiased questions, not kind of questions to lead into answers, but ask who, what, where, how, why questions. These are all God questions. These are science questions. These are the kinds of questions you ask the universe that seems to prove itself around those questions. There's definitely a creator of some sort. I cannot tell you who or what it
Yeah.
or he, she, it is, but in the Greek, the word theos means the this, that, he, she, it, one. It's like all of the articles, right?
Yeah.
So it's all of them, but they all lead towards a question. And if we will take a moment and consider that someone is having an experience that we're not having, and because we're not having it, we don't get to judge it. We give grace to another person to say, hey, here's what I am trying to communicate, or here's what I'm expressing when I say this, and leave it there. Don't try to judge it after that. All right. Really briefly, R. This is where you take a moment and respect the moment. Right? You respect it. You re-see it. Respect means to look again. R-E again. Spect means to look at. Look at it again. Look at it from different vantage points. What if you would look at it from the vantage point of a child? Look at it from the vantage point of a woman. Look at it from the vantage point of a man. Look at it from the vantage point of a teenager. Look at it from the vantage point of someone who's American. Look at it from the vantage point of someone who is not American. Because not everybody is American. And the problem with Americans is that we think that because we are looking at us, we think everyone looks and behaves and acts like us. Divorce rate in America is not the same as the divorce rate in Italy and any other place. A lot of things that are happening here are only happening here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So, and then we have E. That's when you embrace. You just take a moment and you take what's in front of you and you pull it close and you surrender to the experience. Or surrender to that experience of getting to know somebody you don't know, or having a conversation that might be uncomfortable, that you might hear some things you don't like to hear, or hearing things about a culture that you would consider, if you're a religious person or a political person, against or adverse to your, or antithetical to your overall standard. Then be at least willing to listen. Ask, like it's not gonna. You're not going to die from listening.
Yes.
You're not a victim if you're just listening. You become a victim when you start attacking. The thing you attack with is the most vulnerable to attack. So what are you going to attack with? Well, I attack with my ears as much as I can, as long as I'm not triggered, as long as I've dealt with some of those internal issues. Right? Some things I'm still working through. A lot of things I'm kind of like, it's not really a big deal. But be willing to pare things down. Pause, ask, respect, embrace. And when we take things, it's sort of like walking off the field. I had a coaching call a while back with a former NFL athlete, and I said to him, I said, what would life be like in this particular scenario if you learned to walk off the field? He was an O lineman, and that's his job. His job is to attack, 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 attack. I said, what if you played that scene out where the ball was about to get hiked, and instead of rushing through the line, through the defensive line, or rushing through the defense line or protecting the quarterback, or whatever you need to do, or whatever that position plays, instead of rushing through, instead of when the ball hiked, you stood up, you turned around. No, you stood up and you walked backwards. This is what I told him: stand up and walk backwards and watch the field get smaller. Because it's about perspective. If you can pare it down to something small, then it becomes palatable. You can actually deal with it. You're willing to taste and see. Right? No, most people won't bite into something that's too big. We'll throw it away. But if something is small enough, like a grape, right? Oh, let me taste this. Right. An M&M, something small, we'll be willing to taste it. We'll be willing to try it. When something is new for us, what do? Give me the smallest piece. Why? Because we just want to taste a little bit. That's what curiosity is. Curiosity is looking at something that you normally would not engage in and say, I'll have a taste if it means I get a seat at the table to have a conversation that brings about a solution.
All so well said. I just want to add one thing.
Please do.
The, the most difficult thing I find for people
Mhm.
is not just letting go of judgment, but it's actually listening to what is said, not readying yourself to jump in with your bit or having an answer or having a solution or any of those things. It's
Yes.
just listening.
That's it.
And I believe
That's it.
that's where we have to improve.
Yeah. We all do. I mean, like, and if even if you have to catch yourself when you're not listening, at least you were listening enough to be able to catch yourself not listening. It's like being able to recognize those small little steps forward. And you, if we use our emotions to make the negative things big, why not use our emotions to make the positive things big? Why are we so hell bent on being negative? Why not look at this is the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Why not decide for a moment this was a small step forward, and then think, well, this small step forward leads to more small steps forward. How would it make you feel? How does it make you feel that you're making progress? What does progress feel like? And amplify that feeling in your body so that you celebrate those moments where, dang, I wasn't listening, but I caught myself. Right? Celebrate that. Those butts
Celebrate
matter.
every
Every
little
little thing. Oh my, it's so important. People, we miss that, but people miss that, but it's so important to celebrate the progress that you're making because it's all an internal job. Everything is internal. If you're doing something towards someone else, you've done it to yourself first.
That's
You can never do anything to anyone that you haven't already done to yourself first. Because whatever we've convinced ourselves of emotionally and and through our feelings and emotions, that becomes reality for us. We believe what we feel is what's real. And if you convince yourself emotionally that something is, once you've done that, you'll behave out of that same emotion because that emotion is giving you a reward factor, especially if it's hitting that dopamine response.
yeah, yeah.
So why not create? Why not rewire a dopamine response around positivity?
I love that. Absolutely love that. I have taken up a lot of your time, and I thank you so much
Thank you.
because I knew that you would give us some really interesting perspective.
I appreciate it. I'm glad you listened to me fumble through all these words and and just kind of a lot of it is my ruminations. A lot of it is just things that some of it is things that I'm experiencing. Some of it is not. Some of the things that I've helped other people through that I know works, principles and tools. But we need more tools and less guns and bombs. I'm all for protecting yourselves, protecting your families, protecting your information, protecting your data, all that stuff. But what really needs to happen is that we need the kind of tools that help us interpersonally connect with one another.
Absolutely. Communication tools.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which I'm work. Look, I am not a talker. Like I'm talking because I'm on this podcast with you. But if this is off, I'm not talking, and like I get in trouble for this because I'm not a proactive communicator. Like I'm a proactive thinker, but I'm not a proactive communicator. So having the courage to communicate things that are
Yeah.
hard, right? Even to people who are not curious about them. That right there is still a step forward.
Yes, it
Say what
is.
needs, John Mayer said it. Say what you need to say. Say what needs to be said, even if it hurts. but at least you get an opportunity to say it and then you can explain it. And if someone doesn't want to remove their meaning of it, then that's on them. It
Yeah.
really is on them. You can't do anything about how someone else interprets something. You have to get in control of your mind, your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions. They're all yours. You breathe, you imagine, you surrender. You do it in that order. Your breath is under your control, your imagination is under your control, and what you surrender to is under your control.
Control. Yes, it is. Well, I think that's a wonderful note to end this on. Nathaniel, I thank you again. Make the most of the rest of your today.
I
And
will. Thank you so
we
much.
will talk again soon.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I am thrilled now to reintroduce my guest, Elisa Sugarman. It's lovely to have you back.
Oh, it's so great to see you, my old friend. We're old friends now at this point.
We are. And I'm very honored that at such short notice you came on for me. I think it's incredibly important right now when the whole world is in tumult and everybody is almost walking around in shock. It's the things that have gone on in the past 2 weeks. I can honestly say I cannot think of anything in history with such incredible brutality. And it is not a case of, I don't want to put anything political in here. I don't choose my friends based on their religion. It's not ever been something that I asked or didn't, because that to me is a sacred choice people make. And I firmly believe you, me, everybody we know, we're just humans.
Mm-hmm.
People could stop with all the labels. Labels don't do us any favors.
Nope, they sure don't.
And to that end, after tossing and turning and having some kind of sleepless nights, last night I got a message from my pod host stating that this would be my 100th episode. And it was the universe kind of poking me, saying, you're worried about your mental health right now because you're worried about the world's mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So why not use that podcast episode to offer people some tips, some wisdom, some things that they can do to protect themselves.
I love that. I love that you made that intentional decision, because any of us who have voices that can resonate in different communities need to use those voices.
And it was about, for me, stepping up, but understanding that asking for some of my past guests to come and be part of the show, if I didn't do it, I would be dishonoring you and Chris Michelle and the other people that are on the show. And that did not sit well. So did not get much sleep last night. But I will say I was at least thoughtful enough not to send messages at 1 o'clock in the morning.
And I appreciated that.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
Yeah. Some have said, well, my phone's off anyway, so it doesn't matter. Would have got it this morning.
You know what, Elaine? Honestly, even if you had, I'd still be sitting here.
I know you would, and my heart is literally overflowing, because for you to, on such short notice, make time for me is wonderful. But more importantly, we need to make time for the rest of the world.
Yeah, we do.
So, with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to you because I value and respect what you have to say and the knowledge that you have, and the fact that you are now so well trained in suicide prevention that I bet you have some really good answers.
I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that a lot. I'm not necessarily sure I'm convinced that I have all the right answers, that's for sure, but I do know that it's where I spend the majority of my time, in that mental health space, advocating for suicide prevention and awareness, and just doing general mental health advocacy as a whole. And I mean, as a crisis counselor and as a storyteller and as a content creator who is now very firmly embedded in this space, thanks in large part to you and to the original. I always go back to this, Elaine, because it was such a powerful watershed moment for me when you reached out to me years ago now and found me when I had first publicly acknowledged my father's suicide. I had never spoken about it before. I made a simple post. I think it was for Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month a few years ago. And you reached out to me all the way from, I think it was Ontario.
Yep.
And from Ontario to Boston. And you said, we don't know each other, but your content came across my feed and I wanted to chat. Would you be willing to chat? And our conversation was the very first conversation I ever had publicly about my father's suicide. And in that time, since that point, I've pivoted every bit of the work that I'm doing in the world, every bit of the content that I'm creating and putting out there. I'm a crisis counselor now, working with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, working with Samaritans, working with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And all of my work centers around this subject that we're talking about right now, which is mental health and wellness. And
the Trevor Project.
And the Trevor Project. Yep. I did a shift with them this morning, and I really feel like you were kind of that angel that came down and unlocked that new path for me. So I send you kisses and appreciation, mad appreciation for that. But to answer your question, look, I can only speak for myself as someone who has very deep connections to the Middle East now, particularly in Israel. I'm Jewish, and my husband's company is based in Tel Aviv. My husband and my daughter and I, one of my daughters, we were in Tel Aviv only 2 months ago.
Yeah.
We have friends who live right outside the city who are spending their nights in safe rooms with their children. I think 15 or 20% of my husband's workforce has now been called back into service, into active duty. So like we're definitely feeling all of the feels, and it's been a really tough week and a half. And there isn't one solution. There isn't like a one size fits all. Well, what button do we push, or, what video do we watch, or what mantra do we say, or, how do we navigate it? I think it's very situational. It depends on who we are and where we are and what we do to cope. But there are some universal things that I think that we can all do. And a big part of that is talking about what's going on. It's doing what you and I and others hopefully are doing. And it's just saying like, Elaine, I'm scared, or I'm hurting, or I'm sad, or I'm worried. Saying those things out loud with people, to people who understand, and just holding space for each other. I think it's very much a symbiotic kind of situation that we're in right now, where we're all collectively, I don't care if you're Jewish, I don't care if you're Palestinian, I don't care who you are. If you are a human being with access to TVs and radio and internet, then you're hearing it and you're seeing it and you're feeling it and you're hurting for humanity. I'm hurting for the Palestinians who are innocent victims. I'm hurting for the innocent Israeli victims. And it's just a tough position to be in. So I think that what we have to do, which is what we forget to do in moments like this, is take care of ourselves and take care of our mental health and well-being. And part of the way we do that is, like I said, by having those conversations, by getting away from our screens.
Yes.
Get away from your phone shut the TV off, get outside, breathe some air, find some sunshine, take a walk, read a book, listen to some music, journal, do a yoga flow. Those are the things that I've been doing. I can only speak to what I've been doing myself, and I've been doing all of those things as much as I can to just take care of myself, because we're no good to anybody.
No.
Take care of ourselves. So I guess that's like kind of the high level. I don't want to call it advice, because I'm really not giving advice. I'm just kind of sharing what it is that I do, that I know an awful lot of other people are doing, that seems to in some way at least be cathartic, I guess,
Yeah.
in such a crazy situation.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was asking, and I have to stop and say thank you for the lovely things you said. But I credit the universe, because we were not in each other's orbit.
Mm-mm.
We, you know, there was no commonality. You were in the parent author space, and
Mm-hmm.
I've gone way past that. I'm a grandma, and I'm the digital person, so it was really wonderful. I tend to put things to the universe every so often and say, okay, well, if I need to go this direction, help, show me where to go, show me what I need to do now. And immediately the universe showed me you. And
and it showed me you right back. It really did. It was a very symbiotic situation.
Yeah.
And I'm incredibly grateful. And I think I've said this to you in the past. The signs are out there. We just have to be paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've often said, probably to you too, I'm annoyed with myself at times that I'm a slow learner sometimes, and it takes me a long time to get the lesson. But these past few years, I realize that I am actively searching for those hints, for those little tweaks from the universe. Because if you're going to put it out there that you want the universe to help you, that you want something to happen, or you need something, then you got to keep your eyes open.
That's it. That's the name of the game. That's right. You got to be paying attention.
Yeah, yeah. And with that in mind, there are times that you have to close your eyes. You have to turn off those screens. You have to get away from the news, because as much as, some news tries to be a little more balanced, our own perspective comes into everything.
Mm.
It just does. And, nothing more telling to me than a CNN reporter, who is a very seasoned reporter, diving into a ditch and in such fear, forgetting she was a reporter.
Mm.
And just spewing words that were, for her, terror. And it was really eye-opening to see that someone who is so seasoned cannot do their job, because this is such an anomaly in our world. And my bottom line for everything is, and always has been, we are human, period. We all are human. We are short, we are tall. I am spotted. Some people are pale, some people are dark. You know what? Doesn't really matter. My hair's blue. Okay. It doesn't matter how we dress it up. When you slice us open, we are all the same on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we have to get back to understanding.
Well, I think we've been as a society, as a humankind, I feel like we've been so focused on hating our differences
Yeah.
instead of doing the thing that we should be doing, which is not even to say like, oh, we're all the same. And I know how you're saying that. And I
Yeah.
agree with how you're saying that. You're talking
Yeah.
about an inside beating heart. We bleed red. We're, we're all human beings who live, who die, who are fearful and joyful and all of those things. But we spend so much time fighting about our differences instead of
Yeah.
celebrating the differences, embracing the differences, understanding the differences, learning from the differences. And that's
Absolutely.
the critical piece that I think everyone is missing. And it seems like sitting here talking in our safe little, our safe little online space, it seems like I'm oversimplifying, but am I? Like it's
Yeah. You're
really
not.
simple. I don't care how well educated you are. I don't care how well established you are. I don't care how much money you come from or privilege you come from or don't come from. Like, man, is it really that hard? No.
And I'm going to make it even simpler because, our differences are what make life interesting.
Right.
Can you imagine if we were all exactly the same?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh my God, I'd be bored to tears in 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Or why bother? Humans, I know, are comparative by nature. We cannot know short unless we know tall.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot know dark unless we know light. We can't know cold unless we know heat. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But it should stop at the world around us.
Mm.
It's irrelevant to each of us. And just think how hard it would be to differentiate your kids from somebody else's if we all looked exactly alike.
Yep.
I wouldn't make a good penguin.
Well, I mean, it's true. It's really true. But the fact of the matter is that those differences are what we should be embracing. And those opportunities for learning and for understanding and for growth and for collaboration, those all come from peeling away those fun differences.
Yeah.
The word differences, I think, has this negative connotation. Like
Yeah.
if you're different, you're other than, you're excluded,
Yeah.
you're somehow less than. And that is so untrue. When I hear the word different, I get excited by
I
the
love
word
that.
different.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited to have the conversations with people who know more than I know.
Oh my God, yeah. And there are a million who know more than I know.
Yeah, right.
But you have curiosity. I have curiosity.
Yeah, and we do. And I think that what is at the very root of so many of the problems in this world, so much of the deep conflict in this world, is the fact that people who don't know what they may feel they need to know are fearful of that unknown, and that fear is usually projected in a very negative way. That fear creates hostility.
Yeah.
And that hostility creates anger, and that anger creates situations like we have right now.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah, and I just keep shaking my head because I don't get it exactly. Everybody does. I know that you have a lot on the go too. I have to say thank you so much for taking the time to come and share your wisdom, because it is wisdom, no matter what you say. It really is.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I am just so honored to watch your journey, because it's totally amazing. And that's why I reached out, because I have such respect for what you've taken on and what you do, and know having a teeny tiny piece in it is gift enough for doing this podcast at all.
Well, it's more, just for the record, it's way more, in my opinion, it's way more than a small piece. You almost single-handedly, just by reaching out and by encouraging me to be vulnerable and encouraging me to share my story and my truth and my past. That was the catalyst for me. That alone was the catalyst for me. And once I started talking to you, I couldn't stop talking about it. And it just created such a seismic shift in my life and in my work. And they say everything happens for a reason, and I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
And people come into and out of your life for very, very specific reasons. And I absolutely, it's so clear why you and I kind of, came together. But, now that I've had the experience of having someone genuinely want to, provide a safe space for me to be vulnerable, like that's all I want to do now is provide the same kind of space. So just so you're clear that the respect is very, very mutual.
Thank you. Thank you. And if we can give a seed of hope to one person, then, that to me is worth its weight in gold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope we do. And, I think we can. And the more conversations that we all collectively have like this, the more hope will come from that.
Absolutely. And the one thing that I've been saying today to people is my wish for everyone is to take 10 minutes out of your month, just out of your month, 10 minutes, and reach out to someone you do not know. And I don't want you to talk. I want you to listen. Give them 10 minutes of total attention so they can be seen and heard. Because you never know what you're going to learn.
Mm-hmm. I love that wish, and I support it. I support it completely.
Thank you. On that note, I thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe on your favorite service. Suicide Zen Forgiveness was brought to you by Truel Social Media, the digital integration specialists. Let them get you on page 1 in the search results.
And also by Canada's keynote humorist, Judy Croon, the motivational speaker, comedian, author, and stand-up coach at Second City.
Hey friends, my name is Lisa Sugarman, and I'm a Boston-based mental health advocate, a suicide loss survivor, a crisis counselor with the Trevor Project, a storyteller with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and an author and a columnist. And I recently rebranded my website, lisasugarman.com, as a destination for suicide prevention and awareness resources, videos, interviews, and content to help you or someone you know find resources and support. So if you're looking for some real unfiltered talk about suicide and loss and grief and mental illness, just visit my website. And you can also hop over to my YouTube channel at The Lisa Sugarman and watch my suicide survivor video series. My personal mission is to help end the stigma surrounding suicide and mental illness by normalizing conversations about mental health and mental illness and grief and loss, one conversation at a time.